Melta gun tip looks really good. So let's just put some yellow and some red down. Hey, look, color theory. I'm too lazy to grab orange because it's over there. Why am I putting red and yellow down? Why would I do this? Color theory. Dreaded Paints, what's up, brother? War Squirtle in the chat, legend. Like, if I'm going to do, like, a non-metallic gold, and I didn't want to grab orange, but red was right there, obviously this makes orange, right? In some capacity. And now, some people, they're scared to blend, right? They're like, oh, but how do you know it's always going to be the right orange? I don't. I'm just using my eyes. You know what I'm saying? It'll work. It'll ride. Just have faith. Right? That's how I look at it. Like, have faith that you will be able to use your eyes. Now, oftentimes when you're doing like a kind of a bronzy gold workup, it has been established, it's pretty understandable, that having some brown in there works. Okay? Now, I think most people, and this might not be accurate. I see this is why I need to like have that chart, right? I need to have that list curated, but like, check it out. I think most people can acknowledge that brown, this is transparent brown, moves into yellow pretty organically. Do you see this? That's pretty fucking organic, right? Right? Brown also moves into red pretty organically. See that? Huh. Interesting. Almost as if brown is the fucking best color. So, why do you think brown is so tight? Anybody? Any student want to raise their hand on this? 5 yo dogs. 5 yo dogs. Why is brown so tight? Stoppy Jones is correct, but that's not the answer I was looking for. Can you give Stoppy Jones 5 yo dogs? Because that's a half truth. Stoppy Jones. That's a half truth. Unhappy Dan, give him 5 yo dogs. That's the real answer. Stoppy Jones, 5 yo dogs. Unhappy Dan, 5 yo dogs. So, what Stoppy Jones is saying is brown is just dark orange. True and false. That's light spectrum. Okay, that's literally the light spectrum that's different than this. Okay, but they are very linked. These are pigments. These are CMYK pigments. Okay, so quite clearly brown fucking exists. Like, and it was mixed, and they can tell you exactly how they fucking made it. Okay, and so in the pigment world, physically making this puddle of brown, there is a literal science to it. And in that science, basically every primary color you know of is in this, is in brown. Right? You can make brown occur on your palette at any time by just mixing the primary colors, as you know them. And again, the primary colors are kind of sketch because, again, when you introduce the light spectrum, which is linked, you start to realize that the primary colors that you think are primary colors aren't really primary colors. Okay? That's a whole other lesson. So, all you need to know is brown is essentially, like if this, let's say this is neutral brown, if that's a word we're going to use, then this sort of has mostly equal parts all the primary colors built into it. And then you know how sometimes we call a brown like mahogany or umber or sienna? Well, really all those browns are skewed to some other color. Like maybe there's more red in it. Maybe there's more blue in it. You know what I'm saying? So literally brown, just like any color, can move in any direction based on what else was in it to make it based on the CMYK spectrum. So this is a pretty neutral brown. And so chemically, it has a relationship to any other fucking color we want to deploy. Secondly, it's dark. Brown is kind of like warm black. You can also think of brown as like warm black, and that's how I think of it. I'm using it to be darker than these, but creatively, right? JBZ, brown has more orange than yellow. Interesting. What is orange? How do you get to orange? JBZ. Into the pit. Here for the knowledge drops. And Unhappy Dan also needs 5 Yo DZs. Love minis. And also, War Pigment says, can brown be cool? I guess. You could try to cool it up, but like I don't see the relevance in that. Like what you can do is have brown be like warmth added to shadows. So then like the whole thing can be cool if you want, but like I tend not to do that to my brain and try to work on that. You know? Stop it, Jones says brown is the inner ring all the way around the pigment CMYK ring. Yeah. It's true. So, what was my question? Oh, yeah, I was asking JBZ. He says brown is more orange than yellow. And I was like, well, how do you get to orange? It's already on my palette, right? Right? So we know if we start mixing these together, right, we will be in the orange world, right? And depending on how much yellow to how much red depends on what kind of orange we're talking about, right? So, of course, orange is in brown. You know what I'm saying? like that, like, and of course, the second these two colors enter the slurry together to make this, they are now viewable as this, right? So of course it's going to look oranger. But then what happens if, like, let me see, let me find, do I have a... And here's a better example. Some black. And this is a better example. This is transparent red. Which is almost empty. God, I gotta go through my shit. But this is a sloppy example, but like essentially if you just start messing with it, right? You just start moving it left and right, up and down. Here's some black. You start to see that we've essentially made like a beautiful brown that is different than our neutral brown, you see? And this right here, that's our transparent brown. They're not dissimilar, but they are different, you see? And so by just moving into space of these primary colors, and we're able to understand like why brown is so legit. Like I put transparent blue in it, I put transparent red in it, straight up yellow, and some real red or some pyro red. But the reason transparent red is better is because it has so much magenta present in it. This red has a bunch of orange innately in it, like way more, because it's not actually magenta, right? So that's why using this red starts to give us this kind of mahogany feeling. You see? Because we're getting way more of a purple vibe now. So, so when you can play with brown like this and you can at least visualize it, you kind of understand why brown is the best color. And why it just has a relationship to all of the colors in a very clean way. More pigment, cut blue from your brown. Well, it's a lot different. If you cut blue from your brown, you know, you're not really brown anymore. If you just use, like, because what's CMYK? CMYK, magenta, yellow, and blue, or cyan, right? If you cut the cyan element out, you're kind of falling apart. But brown is kind of like all of it. So a lot of times that's why you'll see me throw brown down. And I'll throw some black next to it usually, because I'm just figuring out ways to be creative. That was how to make orange. Well, again, actual primary colors, war pigment, are magenta. So this is transparent red. Now, transparent red is almost equally magenta and yellow. Okay? So actual red, not like paint red. Like paint red has orange and shit in it. But this is almost 50-50 yellow and magenta. So red is a secondary color. Okay? It's not a primary color. And so if you have already yellow and magenta interacting, all you have to do is put more and more and more yellow into this. And you are orange, right? If you just skew it, you see? And that's not enough. So, from the CMYK perspective, if you add yellow and magenta equally, you get this. Then if you add it unequally, you get the orange. So that's why I'm saying is like both are true. We're talking about light waves and we're also talking about pigments. So it is said that brown doesn't exist as a light wave. Okay, but it does exist as a pigment. I guarantee it. I can fucking make it occur all day, every day. Does brown still work with green? Oh yeah, dude. All fucking day, homie. All fucking day. All fucking day. Because what is green? And this is transparent green. Okay? So it looks really blue on camera. So let me sheet it a little bit with some straight up green. Ivan says you have a nice haircut. Always hated the older one you had. Do you mean like I don't have a haircut right now. What I have is I haven't cut my hair in weeks. So you don't like it when it's down to the skin. So here's more of an easier to see green. But green, blue and yellow, cyan and yellow. It's in brown. Like, that obviously works. You see? Some yellow in here even, you see? So think about like dark camo green is basically just green with brown, dog. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's it's my cat. It's the lighting. JBZ. There you go. I just warmed up the light. I had it. It was more cool for the Black Templar. War pigment, yeah. Black is the K. It's the index, right? It's the. But, you know, quick, just a little bit of, you know, what goes through my head, you know. Nothing too crazy. I'll try to, like, expand more upon things as we go, as we move through the space. So what we have is this melt-a-gun bit. And so what, you know, in making the non-metal metallic effect occur, we're also playing with these yellows and these oranges, right? And painting is always about opacity. So here's some straight up yellow, but with some of that brown in it, some water. Right? So I can establish kind of like an overlay or a yellowification. See, I can kind of yellow it up a little bit and kind of smooth it out with a yellow filter. Because there's a lot of brown and gray in there, and anytime like gray gets in there or black gets in there, it gets a little desaturated. War Squirtle, thank you for the support, brother. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get some strong man love in chat for War Squirtle. Thank you, Crescent Fang, for the sub, and Charis. Thank you for the follow. So just kind of yellow it up a little bit. But, you know, maybe I do want it more desaturated, right? And so then you can actually do things like get some of this black, right? If you use black a little bit more than the brown, maybe throw some of that yellow in there for the link. What we can do is get something darker that is desaturated. And I can use, again, a semi-opaque version of this to kind of establish this horizon line, which is crucial to the effect. And then we can even kind of glide in right here for a slight secondary. And we can walk it down into the yellow real estate here, and it's not opaque. So then I'll kind of stop right there. We can move back to the yellower version. We can kind of just blur that connection here. So it's a little bit more classy. See? And it's just literally, we're just painting like low opacity filters. Again, we can take the more desaturated version. And here I'm going to just take some of the excess moisture off. Kind of reinforce right there. And let's just kind of add this darker filter right here. Go sneak a little bit more yellow back in for that blur. Now up here on top, we've got a nice desaturated bright line. What I'll do is I'll disperse that a a little bit with some more yellow. Which what I'll do is it'll like resaturate it slightly. And this is where white is so super helpful. So I'll just put a spot of white down because it's the brightest. And in order to make things a little shinier, you have to be willing to go to white or black. So I'm going to try very carefully to utilize the heart pull strategy here. And just bring that whiter line in there. Use some tracer technique right here. Because if you're trying to make something look reflective, being willing to go to white on these edges is crucial. So using the side of our brush and scraping, that's the tracer. So having all the theory is great, but if you don't have the practical application, it's hard to deploy things. So it's important that above the horizon line, the dark part, that we have a really nice clean bright line. And I messed it up slightly right there. And it's like the longer the pull, the harder it is. And also it's kind of right up against two slats, which is kind of tricky. But I made the line a little fat on the dark side, which is safer because it's easier to clean that up. Okay, now I do have to fix that line, as mentioned. So let's move back over here. Let's grab some of that black and brown I have chilling over here. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more opaque. And I'm going to try to just carve into that line. Some stippling, some sewing machine strokes. Those two slats really make it hard because my brush keeps dipping into them and like distorting my line. So the place I chose to put the horizon line is a little tricky. I should have raised it up a millimeter. It made it unnecessarily difficult. Like I didn't work with the geography of the model very well. So I'm going to try to be very careful here and try to bring that shine back in. This time understanding the geography. And this one rides a lot better on this side. So what I'll do is I'll resaturate that line a little bit. I'll take some stock yellow, lower the opacity slightly, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of glaze it along that white line, help soften it slightly and make it a little bit more gleamy. And we want to have like a secondary shine up on the other kind of secondary horizon line, but not as bright. So I'm taking some of the white, some of the yellow. So it's not going to be like that nearly as white. So a little bit more low key right there. And what we're going to do is make sure to get the under highlights in these little slats, because light should catch this this ledge. So you just want to stick the tip in there and just lightly scrape that seam, like so. And I already did this side. Just reinforce. Now, I want to generate some contrast with the barrels. So what I'll do is just take some brown and black. And we will carefully remove the yellow from existing on these tips. Because all that really matters here is that our predominant viewing angle, which is the sides of this gun, are done. This tip is just a nuisance. So what we're going to do is just black it out. And I'm even going to make sure for the front viewing angle, we even kind of take a lot of the yellow out. You see? Now, same rules apply to this spot right here. Let's just carefully remove any yellow that's spilled over onto this coil or barrel. Like so. And now, since I do have some bolt power red out here, let's just take a quick side quest. Put a little flow proofer down. Let me rinse my brush. So straight bolt power red, and let's take this. Let's take a pit stop to just raw dog it right over these shoulders. And I'm using a little modified tracer technique right there. Kind of just brutishly applying it right over the burnt red. And this works because the relationship between bolt power red and the burnt red is innately respectful. They're designed to work together. And that's where people go wrong. People will see like two reds interacting like this, and then they'll think like gray and white do the same thing, or black and white. So now we can make a little bit of Tangerine Dream, introducing white and yellow to the red. And the yellow will help maintain saturation. The white is raising the value. And now what I'll do is I'll use a little bit more surgical application using more of a deliberate tracer. I'll just get that edge, you see? And I've mentioned this before. Old school red highlighting trick was to use like dwarf flesh and like elven flesh, GW style. And when you really break down what makes a like bottle flesh color, it's literally just like pink and yellow. And pink is red and white, right? And so you realize suddenly that like obviously like I look at yellow is like bright red. You know what I'm saying? But yellow isn't always going to make the red brighter, so I bully some white in there. So now it's, you know, yellowed pink. And so you can cheat a little bit more white in there, and don't ever be afraid to put too much white in there, because like the worst that's going to happen is it just gets brighter. See? It's a little disrespectful, but that's fine. I can fix that. And to fix it, all you gotta do is just go back in time to make to a little red, maybe a little yellow. Lower the opacity a little bit and just kind of glaze it in there and give it a filter that kind of links them back together. So now we've got some nice, pretty, crisp lines. Contrast is upheld. Cherish. Welcome to the chat. grab a little bit of it. I need a little bit of nicotine real quick. Khalees, what's up, bro? Now, Cherish, if you're just tuning in, what we have is the Outrider bike here. Turn some line away. So we made sure to get the biker kind of all set up. And those videos are currently out. Just some quick edge highlighting, like just super easy shit. And now we're curating the sidecar, which is like a whole other fucking model. And so what I'm focused on right now is just kind of getting it blocked in. Can they dry fit easy? I mean, yeah, this just hooks under the bike. I should have probably left this guy's torso out because I realized like it made it harder for myself, but like I don't mind painting around things. The daily be an artist. I'm scared to use washes on white armor. Don't use them on white armor. Pin washing would be the solution. For example, I've got some white that can use some pin washing right here. So the only reason that you would ever need a wash is because you want this seam to be darker, right? All wash is doing is making dark stuff darker, which creates sharpening, the sharpening of the image occur. It makes contrast occur. So when you put a wash all over it, you're basically sacrificing the round areas for speed, which is totally doable. And I teach a whole lesson on that in my private classes. It's the second class in my 101 curriculum called Active Washing. But with something like this, I'm not going to do that. What I would do is be like, oh, I painted it white. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember that. So here's the white. But what makes white darker? A little black, right? Because now we're talking about dark gray. And what I need here is I need this gray to be darker than what's in the shadow there, but not so dark that it's disrespectful, right? I just need to be a little darker. The more respect, the better. So I'm just kind of using my eyes to kind of look at what I can do here and just kind of moving it until I feel like it's safe. Right? Washing is a technique. It's not a product. So now what I'll do is I'll kind of lower the opacity a little bit so it's semi-opaque and a little wet. And what I'm going to do is just use the tip of my brush and pull back to my heart right where I want it. And really where it matters is up here, right? And dark lines, their whole purpose in life, when you're painting a 3D model like this, their whole existence is to create separation, is to create frames. So what I'm doing is putting this very respectful line down. And now I'm going to engineer into that line darker. So now I've added slightly more black to the mix, semi-opaque and a little wet. And I'm going to sneak this in. And if you're new here, I think I can define every technique with an opacity and a moisture level. And so washing is semi-opaque and a little wet. So you see now what I'm doing is I'm boxing out that frame very respectfully. And even though like my line's a little fat there, it's like forgivable. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if it was a wash that was so disrespectful, it becomes less forgivable. So that, you know, this concept of like trying to black line white is just a mistake. And what I'm doing is just kind of stacking it. And maybe I'll put a touch more black in here, but I'm gonna be very chill. I'm focusing the black there, and it's not black; it's just gray still. And you see what it's doing is it's sharpening the image. You see, it's making those shoulders have separation from the shoulder trim. That's it. And so that applies to literally everything. One daily, yeah, like literally, see, thin paint is kind of an oversimplification, right? Paint does any task you want it to do. If you want to make the dark things darker, then you need to establish where the respect lies. I know that this white was like me putting some black down and then adding white to black until it was white. So I know that for this white to be darker, it's just going backwards. And I use my eyes to make it look to be darker than this, but respectfully so, because the mistake is you're like, oh, that's darker. Well, every time you make a mistake, like a line is too sloppy, okay. And that's why we are being semi-opaque, right? Because if we're somewhat see-through, that will mitigate mistakes. But most importantly, if we respect the value more, that also is a secondary mistake mitigator. So the mistake people make is like, okay, I'm going to like panel line this fucking white and black. Or I'm going to panel line this white with dark gray. Nope. I never use gray. Like, it's always me making gray and me deciding what's darker. Because all the rule is make the dark things darker. Not make the dark things fucking way darker in the first line. You know what I mean? Opacity and moisture management. Those are the two factors in all painting. One daily. So, for example, I'm gonna sneak some red in on this melted gun, okay? And the way I'm gonna do that is just grab some burnt red real quick. Thank you for the sub, One Daily. So here's some burnt red. Just gonna lay it down right here. And so I'm gonna basically raw dog this red on, right? I got a little bit of moisture on my bristle. But, like, some people are like, 2 thin coats. I'm like, fuck that. So I'm going to use one and done coverage. I'm going to raw dog this red right on. So if I'm using too much paint, it's nothing to me to move the paint around and smooth it out. Using light brush pressure, and I'm using a series of heart pulls with the tip of my brush. I'm going to work off this wet edge real quick and complete the task of wrapping this case in red. I've added so little moisture to the paint, it's ridiculous. And I'm going to now pull the burnt red down here off that wet edge, using again the tip of my brush in the heart pull strategy. And I'm going to try to not get it on things already blocked out, but if I do, oh well. So I've got that right there. Now I'm going to move back here. Again, this is like pretty much raw dog off the palette. That's a lot of paint, but I'm going to spread the paint out, and I'm going to use the tip of my brush to make that occur. Maybe modify it to a bit of a stipple or sewing machine stroke. And I'm trying to go mainly one direction here. I'm going to pull it down off that wet edge, just making a series of straight lines, pulling straight down. If it gets on this shield, that's fine. I don't care. I haven't painted it yet. Rotate the model to facilitate easier paint strokes. Use the tip of your brush and just stipple in when needed. Rotate back over here. Shout out to Burnt Mark. Thank you for the follow. Let's see if we can sneak in right here. This one actually doesn't have a lot showing. So now going back to the front, I've got it's not max coverage. Like, it's not like the red over black is not always going to be an easy sell, right? So now I'm going to do my second coat, but I'm going to be off to the races establishing drama now, right? So now I'm bringing in some bold pyro red. So it's not just 2 coats of fucking burnt red. My second coat is already having the highlight dragged in. You see? And it's a little wet still. I haven't even let it really dry. which is kind of risky, but if you have like kind of a moisture instinct established, like you've been really practicing, then you're good to go. And I got a little red where I shouldn't have. You see right here, because I wasn't paying attention, and that shit's going to happen all the time. You see right here? I'm just using a little bit of moisture and right in that seam. Try to kind of just disperse some of that red. See that? So I'm just using my brush to water down the red I slapped on the wrong spot and just kind of thin it out to nothing. You see? So, moisture management all day, every day. Rosie, thank you for the follow. Deadpool spin off. What's up, brother? So again, here's a little bit of bold pyral. Sneak some in right here. And it's not raw dog just yet. It's got a little of the burnt red mixed in. Just light brush pressure, light brush pressure, light brush pressure. Deadpool spin off nose. One of my private students. Tin nose. On my tack is ice cold. It's like it's like 65 down here. Just gotta make it hot so it's sticky again. There we go. Oh no! I pushed down on his shoulder and I think I popped his arm off. Pimp down. Oh lordy, what's up, brother? It's my boy right there. Come on, super loud. Where the fuck is my X-Acto blade? Little fucking end cap of dried super glue has introduced itself to my super glue. Oh lordy says, yo, totally stoked on Christmas this year. Thanks, dog. Well, thank you, lady, dog. What was your Christmas present? A little bit of glue. New year, new painting. How's my favorite heretic? Aquila. Oh, just chilling. Heidi in chat. Going to be an Adepticon so I can finally teach you how to pronounce my name. Selin Gadizi. Oh lordy, the gift of Kenny B. I made that post, that holiday purchase post on Patreon. She literally commented publicly on the Patreon page. Oh, I want to buy this for my husband. And I just deleted it. I was like, he's on here. She's like, wow. And she's used your name. And I was like, I know who the fuck that is. So we worked out a deal. Because I caught her up on where you were and stuff. Don't worry, she didn't pay market prices. We worked it out. Okay, well, now there's a viewing angle issue here, where I need to remember to put some burnt red in under the lip here. So I'm just using the tip of my brush and some high opacity, low moisture burnt red. using mostly tip and maybe a little stippling strategy. All right. Now I've got the melt-a-gun mostly worked out. So let me get a little bit more bolt power on the table. Bilbo Swaggins, that's a legend. God, that's an old school name. God, I miss you, dog. Bilbo Swaggins. Happy New Year, brother. One of my favorite Twitch names. So I'm taking some of this Bold Power Red. Gonna lower the opacity a little bit with some moisture. Going to use a paper towel to take some of that moisture off my brush so I can control it again. And I'm gonna reach in here and just kind of deploy a little bit of a top highlight. It's a little wet still, so I'm gonna just kind of make the adjustment and just kind of stipple it in, and kind of like just like kind of cloudy toward the top of the gun. And so we've removed some of the moisture even after adding moisture. The purpose of the moisture was to lower the opacity, not be wet. And so by taking some of the moisture out, I regained some control. And I like to skirt that to be like exactly what I need. So now we've kind of overlaid a nice filter of highlight. Okay. And we'll let that dry for a second. It's really important when you're utilizing this technique is to let that dry before you go in any harder. And so what I'll do is kind of oppose that a little bit by going back to the burnt red. And a touch of moisture. And I'll walk the burnt red kind of back into it, just right there. I smooth that out a little bit. Thing is, it's such a small piece of real estate, you don't really have to do much. Ben 405, that's my boy. What's up, brother? Bilbo Swagger says, "Thank you, brother. Looking icy." Thank you, Bilbo. One daily. Make sure to at me if you're asking me questions directly while I'm painting, because I oftentimes will miss them otherwise. Because it'll highlight in my screen. He says, "Do you work as 2D artist as well? What would you say is the most important thing you've learned with models?" Yeah, I do some drawing. I got a swag shop, actually. Exclamation point shop. I draw all those pictures. He says, "What do you think the most important thing you've learned with models is?" Contrast, man. Oh, and I would say like the realization that they're just three-dimensional coloring books. So kindergarten rules apply. If you're the best colorer in kindergarten and you can apply those rules to models, you're good. You're good to go. Strong lines, stay inside the lines, nice and even shade in between. Like, so these are 3D coloring books. We are actually like the guy coloring the coloring book. The guy who drew the coloring book for you is the real artist. That's how I view it. You know what I mean? It's so somebody made this for me. And all I have to do is generate contrast, which is just creating frames and borders, making sure you can discern things. So make the dark things darker and the bright things brighter. What you do in between is up to you. I use an airbrush mostly. Nerd Hollow, what up, brother? Love Minis said, "Why am I working today?" Because it's Saturday, man. We stream on Saturdays. First time chatter, Jonathan. Happy New Year from France. Happy New Year, brother. Okay, let's jump back. Let me get a little bit more black laid out too. So I finally need to open a new black. Am I gonna do it finally? Or do I still have one floating around? Some transparent black, that'll do the trick. Bilbo Swagger says, "What the crack with the painting lessons, bro? What the crack with the painting lessons, bro? Your vernacular is curious. What?" Contrast, gotcha. Thanks, mate. I've always been a comic book artist and just jumped into 40K. The one daily? Yeah, I mean, I use a lot of comic book concepts of like just strong borders. Like contrast to me is literally just frames, so you can see the elements of the image. Right? Comic books are like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak in here and kind of do exactly what we're just talking about. So I've got kind of like a cloudy sense of drama. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more of that Bold Power Red, and I'm using a smaller brush now. And I'm just going to kind of make sure, and I'm using maybe a little bit of moisture. And I'm just going to kind of, using a heart pull, or I'm using the tip of my brush and kind of pulling back to my body. Just going to kind of just walk this highlight down, you see? And I'm going to hit this next ledge kind of the same way. So this is the coloring in between the borders part, right? Now I want that ledge to be sharp, so I'm just going to bully white it, okay? And now I'm going to use higher opacity, less moisture, and I'm going to ride that rail using a tracer technique, okay? Rotate. I'm going to look for that access. I'm going to stick the brush into this hole right here and ride that rail. So by using white, what I'm doing is ensuring that the value has gotten brighter. Okay? So I'm not worried about it becoming pink. I'll even add a little bit more. See? Now what we'll do is rinse all that white off. Bilbo Swaggins. What score, bro? I'm interested. What's the score, bro? Exclamation point class. I got a tier on Patreon, brother. We have a fully fleshed out curriculum and syllabus. So if you just are already on Patreon or you sign up for Patreon at any tier and DM me, I'll send you a sneak peek at the syllabus to see if you're interested. But if you are interested, sign up for my class tier. It's $100 a month. So now we got to make the dark things darker. So I'll take a little bit of moisture. I'll take some of this black I laid out. Maybe some of this burnt red just to establish some respect here. And with red especially, making dark things darker is usually just as important as making bright things brighter. Maybe more so. So what I'm going to do is just take a semi-opaque wet mix. And I'm really going to make sure our frames are intact. So I want to get around this little ledge right here. Okay, I want to get around this nut. Always wash your nuts. So I'm going to stipple around it. Maybe add more moisture, right? So we have less opacity here, and maybe even just drag some into the bottom here. Right? Maybe take some of that burnt red and just kind of in real time, just walk the burnt red off of that. Semi-opaque. And now we've got like a nice sense of drama there. Okay. Let's move up here. You see these lines got tagged, right? So I need to jam it into those lines using, it's semi-opaque and a little wet. Like that. And it's okay if I get outside the border a little bit because I haven't even done the edge highlighting strategy yet. Wash your nuts. Let's move over here. Using the heart pull, just drag it through. Wash your nuts. This side, sneak in, maybe get inside this little pocket. This nut, maybe even drag a line around this piece right here. Let's move up here. Let's make sure to box this thing out. And I think I'm probably gonna paint this thing a different color, but so that still means we need to establish like some kind of frame. See? And even where like the red meets the shield, I might throw a little border right there. There's this piece here. Again, let's get a frame. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Let's get some highlights going. So again, let's get some bow power red. And let's just see if we can glide it off the top of things right here. Using the tip of my brush, making those little heart pull 3D printer lines. So this is semi-opaque and a little wet. Kind of like a half-hearted glaze. Coloring book rules is that I have strong borders. I'm staying inside the lines. And I'm just doing a kind of a transition between borders. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll bully the white back in. The red ones in chat. Check your Discord messages. Late start today for us. Hope your first Saturday off of the year is awesome. It is. Thank you, the red ones. Bilbo Swaggins, legend. That's sick. I'll get on Patreon. Thank you, brother. We have a lot of success with our curriculum. Many students are in chat right now. So always be cognizant of your tip penetration when you're going to ride any rail or use any heart pulse technique. So this is the easy tracer, right? Horizontal, hold your breath, swing it left to right. But here it's kind of hard to ride the rail. So we have to use just the tip of our brush and try to just physically pull down to our heart. So rotate the model for that easy straight line. So you want to use higher opacity, less moisture, light brush pressure. And when you're using the tip like this, it tends to dry quick. And that's tricky because like my path is not clear. This like thing keeps getting in my way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna re-embed a shadow because I got deep inside this line by accident. So I'm going to rebuild that. To sharpen that image. And I need to do it again. I can tell that's not enough. And you see we got a lot whiter here. So what I'll do is I'll take some of that bow power red. Lower the opacity a little bit by adding water. Take some moisture off and let's just kind of glaze back over those white lines with a very low opacity mix. It should kind of redify them back up a little bit. There you go. And now it's very interesting and pleasing to the eye. Take a little bit of that highlight. And we can actually just dot these right here. You can paint them a totally different color if you want. I don't find it necessary. Jinxie Barb, thank you. What's up, brother? Now, let's see if we can catch this side again. let's run back to that highlight we created, which is just red and white, which aka is basically a desaturated pink. Let's see if we can run a tracer technique first off this ledge. Rotate. Hold your breath, swing it from right to left. High opacity, low moisture right there. Rotate. Now, on these little Space Marine panel lines, we're going to have to run back to the heart pull. So using the tip of my brush, I'm going to try to ride that rail and pull back to my heart. Kind of using the idea of principle of both. So we've got it kind of sketched out pretty easy. Let that ride. Let's move on. See if we can catch a couple spots in here. Let's see if we can hit it from this angle right here. Rotate, looking for that tracer technique. Don't fight it. If it stops transferring, just reload the brush. And keep an eye on all your viewing angles. And I don't even know if this thing's going to be right up here. Okay, let's rinse it down. Let's grab some Bolt Power Red. Again, we're going to just kind of slightly lower the opacity of the Bolt Power Red, take some moisture off. And let's just kind of glaze it into tops of things, kind of bring some of that transition back in. Using a very low opacity mix. This is the red one's model, is it not? So I'm going to take some black and burnt red. And we're going to just kind of slightly stipple into these panels independently. Create a little bit more intrigue. Pluck some highlight out. Let's hit it right there, baby. The right one's yo. War pigment. Whip, question mark? Hey, we'll do a whip at some point. I'm not there yet, emotionally. So let's see if I can just kind of ghettoify some blue, black, some white. I'm trying to make like a kind of a cool gray right here. Maybe a little bit more black. Get that doodad off the red. A little more black. And now say I'm going to just drag some of this over these barrel tips using high opacity. Tip of my brush, just kind of drag it down. Just kind of get that built in. And here, again, I'm going to do it kind of similar. There we go. Too easy. Pow, 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 pow. Okay, let's move. Like I said, I want to get this gun kind of done here. So let me just get that gray we got going, that blue-gray. I'm making it much wider now. What I'm going to do is run... I'm gonna box this out first. I'm using just the tracer technique carefully. Okay, nothing to write home about, okay? Now, on these, I'm going to be careful to put this mostly on the top. See that? Building that shine. Now, we've got this gizmo right here. So I got to start considering what I'm going to do with that real quick. See, I'm using like different blue than I used yesterday, and I'm just making the gray work the same way we made gray yesterday. Aptos, thank you to follow. So what I'm seeing here is I need to draw, it's a cylinder, so I need to draw a highlight in this vertical fashion right here. Okay. I need to pivot to pretty much black real quick while it's still wet, and I need to establish our horizon line on the sides. Cylinders have their own rules, and you can kind of battle it back and forth while it's still wet, letting the moisture help with the blend. That's basically brute force wet blending. So now we've got that dark moving up to light, dark moving up to light. Love Minis chipping in for a good start of the new year. Love Minis is the goddamn legend. Exclamation point beast mod for the greatest mod in the game. Now, Love Minis, I'm dedicating this stroke to you. So here we need to get a bit of a transition to establish, and I'm thinking I'm going to do a tri-blend. Okay? Bright, dark, bright. Run it back to black. While it's still wet, move quick. Let's run some black in the middle. While it's still wet, just using a little bit of patience. I'm going to try to get a dispersal to occur on both sides, like that. And just let that chill, let that relax. Okay? Now I'm going to take a little bit more white into our gray. And let's just stipple a little bit up top here for that shine. Ping, ping. Now here's what's cool. We do have a horizon line right here, and we should indicate it traveling along right there on the coil. That will enhance the overall effect that it is metal. So you just want to kind of match it right there. It's just a subtle, small, just, you know, enhancement. And I'm even going to put the dark part of the horizon line underneath it with just a little bit of black real quick. Like I said, it's a minor detail that will, when observed, enhance the look. Same thing, I'm going to take some black and just kind of brush some in to match this darkness on the yellow. And it's just, like I said, it's just seconds of just maintenance. Nothing real hard to do. Just to kind of continue the shape. Now let's run back up to this big cylinder. Okay. It doesn't need to be chromed out. Okay. It's deliberately duller than what's going on in other places. So what we need to do though is we need to box it out a little bit. So I'm gonna take some highlight, aka just some bright gray that we made, and let's just run a seam. Right, we gotta lift it out of the design. We gotta frame it. So I'm using the tracer technique where I can to catch this edge. Okay. That's just brighter gray. I'm going to box it right here as well. And see, like we did block in some ghetto highlights yesterday on these other elements, these other frames. So should be able to get a sense of how easy it is to trick somebody to thinking something's reflective. Sin for Game 69. What's up? New Year's sub all day, every day. She probably is. Let's see if the bot. Oh, did the bot give you 100 Yodogs? Oh my god. The bot stopped being racist against Canadians. Now, this cylinder, I like the idea that these struts right here are red. You see? Make sure to get the top shelf using high opacity, less moisture than we've been using the brush control technique, heart pull. And it's easy because since I made it gray, red will just stick to gray. Everything does. So I find that kind of linking that red case to extend it to those little flat panels, I think is really thematic. And so let's run some Bold Power Red into the mix, and let's get some bonus blends. You ready? Check it out. We can be really hilarious here. So some straight up Bold Pyro right there. Here's some burnt red. I'm just going to kind of stipple it. Take some black. Using just sewing machine stroke. Now we've got like a baller ass dark to bright gradient right there. And on the side panel here, it's kind of just tucked in. You just got to do a little bit. You don't have to go as hard. But we definitely need to box out that doodad. So let's run back to Bold Power Red. Little white. Little yellow. Let's make sure we're not too wet, control's sake. And we should be able to just kind of trace it, but as long as we're cognizant of our tip penetration. Because if you don't pay attention to your angle here, you'll just end up dragging the tip on the gray by accident. So I'm using a little bit more of a shallow approach and riding my tip right along that seam. Like that. You see we're just popping it right out. A little bit right there. there. Let's get a little bit more white. Just try to get these little guys on the edges too. Using the tracer technique all day, every day. And now look at that. You see that? Just a couple of gimmicks, couple of tricks. Let's make sure this, actually there's a seam right here. I wasn't sure if I was going to leave this red. But now that I've decided to keep like that kind of like same exact shape red over the cylinder, I think it actually is more thematic. So I put a little almost white there, and I'm going to just drag some Bold Power red back in. Kindergarten coloring book rules all day, every day. Look how fucking sick that gun looks. Now, we will do a whip sesh, so let me just block in this sprocket real quick while you guys are queuing up on Discord. Let's get a little, let me just kind of brute force it real quick. So I'm just adding some high opacity, kind of like whitish yellow right here. Like kind of real raw dog coverage. Now I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to throw down some of that brown. I'm going to stipple it in. And I'm just kind of working on creating that fuzz using sewing machine stroke. See, I've got like a good foundation for detail work there now, and I'll just let that dry for a second. We'll come back to it. And it's so, we got to figure out the shield. Like, am I going to make the shield also just gray, like some type of gray? You know? Like, that's way too much blue. But let's just kind of play with the idea of it turning into a cool gray for a second. And see kind of what I like here. Because I would love to cheat it to be way more blue than it should be. So now I'm going to just bully some white in. Like so. Get a little bit of moisture right here. A little bit of black. A bit of black down here. So that's kind of like a quick brute force laydown application, and it's not flawless, but it gives me something to work off of more controlled techniques like glazing. Just using a series of heart pulls, build it up, kind of see what I like about it, what I don't like about it. Let that dry. I'll make my final decisions on what I'll do with that and decide if I'm going to do it on both sides or not. But definitely something interesting has to happen on that shield. It can't just be straight black. And you see, like, what a fantastic like feeling you get with that coolness opposing all that warmth. You know? So we'll let that settle down. We'll come back to it. Do a whip sesh. So what I'll do is get a little water and some of this black. And I'll just kind of take some of that moisture off. And let's see what happens if I kind of run a horizon line through it. Kind of just glaze it. I'm just dry it up more. Right here. Deadpool spinoff, my man. Gonna get some strong man love from my boy Deadpool, one of my black belts. And Deadpool, I just built like a strip right across it. Happy first, bro. Thank you so much. Happy first to you. And we just created this like low opacity strip right across it, right? And let that ride for a minute, okay? Let it just settle down. And I'll reapply it here. And what we'll do is we'll move back into the brighter gray. Down here. And so we'll create a tri-blend. And we'll walk it into the horizon line carefully, like so. Maybe get a little bit of wet black. Can I get a little dispersal going there? Like that. So. Running a little bit of wet glazing, wet blending technique here. So we're basically getting like a bright to dark, back to bright kind of feeling real quick. And introducing more desaturation from like just grays and blacks versus such an overabundance of blue. Are we in overtime? Yeah, I guess we're in overtime right now. Unhappy Dan, thank you for the support. Oh, Slom Two-Face. Thank you for that support, brother. And Unhappy Dan, a couple of legends. The bot will certainly shit on somebody here. We'll determine who that is. Unhappy Dan will surely acknowledge the bot's superiority and who it chooses because he's in love with the bot now. Thank you guys so much, Slom. Sloan Two-Face. Unhappy Dan. Sloan got dunked on. Let's get him curated. It is a double Yo-Dog day, so Love Minis, can you give 1332 to Sloan? Or I can do it. Actually, I'm right here. I'm so lazy.
You gotta get swifty in here. It's time to get swifty.
So we have a minute 28 on overtime. Thank you guys so much, Sloan.
Oh yeah.
What we need to do,
take off your pants and your panties. Shit on the floor.
Also generate a little bit of a crispier line here. Let's see if I have enough time. A minute left. So I'm pulling out my little brush. Gonna grab some more highlight, higher opacity, lower moisture, and let's see if we can use the heart pull strategy and drag a highlight right against that horizon. Right there. Jax, thank you. Says looking good. I appreciate that, Jax. Keeping the overtime clock going. So now we've got like a nice highlight right up against that line. Shout out to Jax. Popping our overtime clock. Now let me just sketch in real quick just to show you how like just sometimes a quick two-tone horizon line plus a crisp border.
Dirty Mike and the boys.
How much that actually, how much work that actually does. Recoil, thank you so much, Recoil. Much love right there. Hashtag Dirty Mike Life. And Recoil, I'm going to, I think I have to heart pull down here, Recoil. Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year, Slum. You see, just a two-tone, fake-ass tri-blend with a crisp border around it. Suddenly your brain's like, oh, shit. You know, like, is that metal? It's like just a simple gimmick, right? It's just an effect. And that's just a sloppy-ass perimeter. It's not even good, you know? We can go in here and, like, kind of spot check. Lower opacity. Got some stipples right here. Oh, heart pull, and then what I'll do is make a little tornado stipple. Just kind of in the center right there. See that? I'll back off into the mid-tone a little bit with a minute left. And I will kind of just disperse that line a little bit right there to make it a little bit gleamier, using the mid-tone and low opacity. It's gonna like settle down. And if we want to, with 40 seconds left, I can take some straight white, high opacity white. And we haven't really used pure white yet, but look at the difference. If I just kind of bring a little white to those edges, look what happens. Before we had just like some of that bright gray. And look at the pop with 10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Tuning in on the first. And just bringing out some of those excessively bright lines. We could even creep in right here. Just a little bit. Don't even go on all the way. Just a little bit. Milston Art popping in on the first of all days to wish you a very happy New Year. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, guys. Now, before I leave you guys hanging, let's grab a little black. Let's wash our nuts. Get a little stipple going around these nuts and bolts. Pull out some of that contrast. Now we can take this black and actually run it right up against the red case, right in that recess, to create that border. To separate these elements. See that? Just kind of frame it. Rinse, 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 rinse. First time chatter, Apto says, hey, just wanted a bit of advice. I'm super new to painting. What techniques would you recommend focusing on? Airbrush. If you're brand new, try to acquire an airbrush is a very early purchase stage in your hobby game. It will change your life. I'm going to use a little highlight right here, high opacity, low moisture. Let's just stipple on with the sewing machine stroke, making the bright stuff bright. Just like that. So then that's one viewing angle, right? And it's actually not even the most common viewing angle of this model, right? What's going to be happening is you look mostly like this at this guy. You're like, oh, it's so sick. And you're going to be like, oh, it's so sick. But like looking straight on is not as common of a viewing angle. So that's about as much power as I will put into that. And then so actually a big part of this viewing angle, which is going to be underappreciated until you have it all together, is actually going to be what happens on this frame. See, like this is going to be so visible all the time, like this thick border. So you cannot slack on that. I know from experience that this is going to be the real fucking view. So you have to kind of almost treat it as its own, well, not even almost, like straight up. You have to give this perimeter as much love as anything, right? You're going to have to go in and kind of just try blend these little regions, or maybe cross blend them, however you want to do it. But you're going to have to go through and kind of just stipple a blend in on this perimeter, or you're going to lose the bones of what you're trying to do here. See, and it's just using my small brush and just kind of stippling, using the moisture present, and just creating like dark, bright, dark, bright. You see that? You see how like that viewing angle matters so much? Where you see where it's just black here? You gotta give it the same kind of love real quick. See? And then you have to follow the rules, right? Now that I've done light opposes dark, right? I said every time you shift plane, you've got to invert. So it's dark and bright, but you also have to border it, right? So using some tracer technique, high opacity, low moisture, and some white, give it a frame, and look what happens. See? And then make sure that this bevel right here also has heart pull strategy right there. See that? Game changer. Game changer. See? So that's just basically the cheat codes to doing non-metallic metal, is just knowing about plane shifting and framing things. So it's just funny how like that matters almost more than what we did on the front. See? Because this is how you're going to be admiring your model most times.